Everyone, this is Ross, and in today's video we're going to be doing some bud grafting. And today we're grafting figs. This is a really vigorous rootstock called Raspberry Latte. It's a seedling from California, and we're going to probably graft about 5 to 6 or 7 varieties onto just this rootstock. And you can see the bud graft up here. This one has already been placed on. We did this before we started filming. And now this section of in between the two nodes, that is where we're going to be doing the next variety. And behind it, you can't see that yet, but we'll take you guys off the tripod at the end. We're going to take you guys around and show you some bud grafts that have taken on some of my fig trees last year and what they look like today, a year later. I think personally the bud graft is probably the most versatile and probably the most important graft I think anyone should have in their arsenal, especially when it comes to figs. I think it just makes a whole lot more sense to do bud graft. It's very quick. But what I was pointing out behind here, behind the bark, is the label. We had written on the bark with a Sharpie, just so we know what variety it is. And when these new buds poke out and break through this parafilm, we can then put a tag on it that's going to be a more permanent tag for the variety name. But let's get started here. We have our scion selected, and what you could do is clip off the bottom and take your knife and kind of just wiggle this. You want to keep your blade very straight, and then just kind of like this, take it off. And that's one bud right here that we have. And you can see that this is very flat. Put this down. It's a very straight cut. There's no grooves, there's no angles to it. It's just very flat. And also we're getting the cambium here, which is what we want. We want the cambium to make contact with the cambium on the rootstock. So that's one bud. We're going to do 3 buds. Another method here shown by my buddy Jamie. He would make a cut like that and then come in here like so and get himself the bud that way. And that will expose some of the cambium down here, which we'll show you guys in a minute why that can be important. Personally, I don't think that's the way that I like to do it. So I'm going to come back down here again as we made this cut. And then we're going to again use our knife and come in here and create the new bud, or take off the bud, I should say. Again, very straight. It should be very straight. We'll do one more. Now, if you just stick your blade in there and put some pressure down and only move one hand, you're hopefully going to get yourself a straight cut. If you move 2 hands, you're going to have more margin for error. I'm going to shorten that one up just a bit. Okay. So then we're going to now, and this is kind of what is leading into that thing that I was talking about. We're going to make these little slits in the bark. This is going to act as support for our buds. So this is going to create some kind of cradle for them to sit on. And that's all we do, is we come down in here, create the cradle, expose the cambium, and that's what we've got. It's really that simple. Now, the goal here is that one of these three is going to take. I'm not expecting all three to, but if one of them does, that's a success. And what you should ideally have is the perfect width here to match the perfect width there. But that isn't always going to happen. What you can do is come in here and shave down this even further and make it a bit wider if you need it. Or you can come in here with your bud and put it on a bit of an angle. I don't like how that one's situated. So we can kind of put this thing on a bit of a slant. And that's not really going to matter because you just want good contact. We just want this to stay in place and not to desiccate, while then this bud eventually grows and strengthens this point here. So putting this in sideways may create some weakness, but down the road it's not really going to matter. And we're just going to stick all these in here wherever I can get them in. Now, if I was doing this without filming, this would probably take me about 5 minutes to do these three. Ideally, you should have a flat surface as well, and that your graft should be indeed flat. Or, I'm sorry, your graft should be flat, so the cuts you make getting the bud, but also the cuts you make on the wood, on the rootstock. And you can see here, this one is just not laying flat because it's just too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this. And I may do this to the other ones too, because they're just too big. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut these back. Because I'm trying to fit on this little space, so many varieties, I think it's just beneficial to cut them a bit smaller. And you can see that there, that's much better. They're lying flat. They're sort of on a bit of a slant. They're making good contact. And then the last part here is just to take your parafilm and wrap it. And the parafilm is exceptionally important for grafting. I personally think that if you're serious about growing fruit trees, you should just have parafilm on hand at all times. There's so many uses. I just think it's so versatile, and it just really helps with weird little things that may come up, weird little situations. It's a really nice day here in Pennsylvania. And if you're curious about what time of the year this is, again, it's pretty soon after these trees have woken up. They've been awake for about 3 weeks minimum before considering doing this, and the sap flow is a bit high. So now I want to take you guys off the tripod and move you around. And you can really see in here on the back, see we have this labeled here, that's the variety above, and you can see it's gonna leaf out in this direction towards that way, whereas this one's gonna leaf out towards us, again with the label on the back, but actually we can't even see it. So what I'm gonna have to do is come in here and label this with the Sharpie or a paint pen right over top of the parafilm. But the ideal goal here is that this one's going to leaf out this way, this one's going to leaf out towards us, the next one's going to leaf out in that direction or even in that direction, and that's kind of what we're doing. We're forming the scaffolds right now. We're forming that permanent structure because all we have is a single stem whip. So this whip's actually about 2 or 3 years old now, so we can do kind of whatever we want to this and form it in any direction we want, because what it used to look like, this whole piece here was on top, and this is all that branching that we cut off. So we're kind of starting over. We're also doing this not only to have many varieties, but to also reduce the height on that particular tree. It was probably the tallest tree I had. Again, raspberry latte is just very vigorous. Now I want to show you guys some bud grafts we did, if I can find some here. I know I have quite a few in the greenhouse. Let's see. Now you can see a lot of them I've been using clefts, and here's the scar there. The cleft graft forms real nicely, but it doesn't always work. It doesn't always make sense to use it. There's one in particular here I'm looking for. I don't remember what I did with it. Oh. So this tree here was bud grafted, and you can kind of see that it's formed real nicely. It seems like a total complete part of the tree now, versus a cleft graft which was put on back here, and this thing really just doesn't have nearly as much kind of sturdiness, longevity to it. Whereas this one here really looks nice. You can really definitely see that. So I would just recommend trying out different grafts. This was certainly is one of the easier grafts you can do. All right, guys. Take care. Hope this one was enjoyable, and we'll see you soon.